Iowa, 1975. Near the little town of Festina, on the family farm, Diane Ott Whealy took two kinds of seed from her grandfather's hand. One was a morning glory, one was a tomato they called the German pink. Those seeds had crossed an ocean, carried by his people from Bavaria to Iowa in 1884. He loved those morning glories for the shade their vines made, a green canopy where the family gathered of an evening. He died a few months later, and those two varieties, friend, became the founding stock of a collection that today holds roughly 20,000 kinds of seed, kept alive on an 890-acre place called Heritage Farm outside Decorah, Iowa. Now hold one question in your mind, because I'm going to leave it hanging until the very end. That German pink, the one his people carried from the old country, does it still breed true after all these years? Does the seed you save grow back the same plant season on season? I will get to it, not now. At the bottom of this list, when we are done counting, I will tell you what became of it. Here is the plain truth of where we stand. Most folks today could not save a single seed that grows back true if the store closed on a Monday and stayed shut. Not because they are lazy, not because they forgot. That is not a moral failing, friend. The people who sell you seed are simply good at their job, and they have been good at it for 100 years. But here's the twist. That promise, buy the packet once and plant your garden for years, it is only true for a narrow slice of crops, and only if you do the yearly work with your own two hands. For some seed it holds fast, for some it falls apart the second season. For a few, done wrong, it can even turn dangerous. So this whole countdown is the honest version, crop by crop, no fairy tales. Now, let me show you who holds the pen to your grocery bill and how they came to hold it. Because your grandfather, or the man who worked the ground before him, once saved his own seed every fall and owed no one a dime for next spring. Then in 1926, on the 20th day of April, a man named Henry A. Wallace incorporated the Hybrid Corn Company in Iowa. His Copper Cross hybrid had won the Iowa State Yield Test back in 1923. And it was a real gain. Hybrid corn grew bigger and it grew more, but the saved seed from that corn would not come back true. So a farmer had to buy again, every single spring. That is no trick. That is plain genetics. Then the garden folks followed. In 1945, W. Atlee Burpee and Company, under David Burpee, put out the Ford Hook hybrid tomato and the Burpee hybrid cucumber, and steered the home gardener towards seed you must rebuy each year. Then came the buying up of the seed houses themselves. Between 1995 and 1998, the Monsanto Company bought Calgene, bought Asgrow seed in 1997, and paid $2.3 billion in 1998 for the rest of DeKalb Genetics. A handful of names, holding a wide share of the seed a whole country plants. Now I want to be square with you. No one outlawed saving your own seed from an old open-pollinated variety. No one sneaks sterility into an ordinary garden packet. What happened was plainer than that, and in some ways harder to fight. Real yield, real convenience, and a slow gathering of the seed trade into fewer and fewer hands. Picture it now, a handful of morning glory and tomato seed, cupped in one palm, the last living thread back to 1884. That is what Diane Ott Whealy held. Then picture the family grocery bill as a long ledger running down the years. For 7 generations your people held the pen to that ledger. Now someone else holds it and hands it back to you each spring with a fresh line to pay. You can take that pen back, not for every crop, not by Monday, but for the right seed, saved the right way, you can. So before I hand you a single seed name, let me give you the one number that decides whether that packet ever pays you back. So before I hand you a single seed name, let me give you the one number that decides whether that packet ever pays you back. That number is the years of life still locked inside the seed, not the price on the rack. The years. I put every one of them on a single page for you. One free chart. Down the left, each crop. In the middle, the exact years that seed stays alive in a cool, dark jar. Down the right side, the exact feet of open ground you need between two varieties so the seed comes back true to its parent. Onion sits near the top, gone in about 1 year. Tomato holds 4 to 6. Lettuce holds 5 to 6. Bean sits steady at about 3. 1 page and you know exactly how many seasons a packet really buys. It costs you nothing. I will tell you where to grab it before we are through. I'm Christopher Marin, and my family has worked this same patch of ground for 7 generations. 7. That is not a boast. That is a receipt. I keep my great-great-grandfather's journal on the shelf by the door. Samuel Marin. Leather cover, cracked clean down the spine, soft as a work glove now. His pencil lines have gone grey with the years. On one page he wrote that a man who eats his own seed corn in a hard winter has borrowed against every winter after it. Save the seed first, he wrote. Eat what is left. Your grandfather likely knew that same rule without ever setting it to paper. Now stay with me, because there is trouble waiting further down this list. Number 4 is a squash that can turn bitter overnight and land grown adults in a hospital bed, and I am not touching it until we are deep in the count. And number 1 is an onion seed that dies in about 1 year, no matter what you do to hold it. Both are coming, neither is now. And if you want all 7 crops, every isolation distance and every drying step in one place you can hold in the barn without a screen, I gathered them into my book, Lost Plant Remedies. The same old ways my family kept by hand for 7 generations, and you can find it wherever you're watching this. Do me one kindness before we count. Tap subscribe. Not for me, neighbour. Every time you do, these old ways land in front of one more person who thought they were lost for good. That is how we keep them within reach for the folks coming up behind us. Number 7. Dry beans. The most forgiving seed a beginner ever held in his hand. Let me tell you about Steve Sando. In 2001, out in Napa, California, he started a bean company he called Rancho Gordo. Here is the part that ought to give you some hope. The man had no farming behind him at all. He built websites. He sold Esprit clothing wholesale. Then another grower handed him an heirloom bean, and he chased it into a whole living. No pedigree, just paying close attention. Beans are kind because the flower pollinates itself before it even opens. Seed Savers Exchange, founded in 1975, puts the isolation at just 10 to 20 feet between varieties. 10 to 20 feet, friend, and your people could grow 2 kinds side by side and keep them both true. Here is the whole method. You never pick beans green for seed. You leave the pods on the plant until they dry brown and rattle when you shake the stalk, like beads in a dry gourd. Then you shell them by hand at the kitchen table. Seal them in a glass jar, cool and dark. Dry bean seed holds about 3 years stored that way. 1 packet, regrown and resaved, carries you across season after season, with no second purchase. I will not quote you a price per pound, because I could not put an honest one in front of you, and I will not invent one. Number 6. Tomatoes. And here 2 lines of history run straight at each other. On one side, the German pink. It came out of Bavaria in 1884, and in 1975 it became one of the 2 founding tomatoes of Seed Savers Exchange. On the other side stands David Burpee. In 1945 he put out the Ford Hook hybrid tomato, and he pulled the whole mass market toward hybrids you had to buy again every single spring. One line asked you to save, the other asked you to come back with your wallet open. The tomato saves easy, because its flower mostly pollinates itself. Seed Savers Exchange lists 10 to 50 feet of isolation, and a planting of 5 to 10 plants, though a single plant will do you fine in a small garden. The seed needs one strange step, and I want you to trust it. Scoop the pulp and the seed into a jar of water. Let it sit 2 to 4 days until a grey-white mould cap forms across the top. That cap is doing your work for you. It eats the slick gel coat around each seed, the coat that would otherwise keep it from sprouting. Then you rinse it clean and dry it on a coffee filter or a window screen. Never a paper towel. The seed grabs hold of those fibres and will not let go. Stored right, tomato seed stays good 4 to 6 years, which carries us down to number 5, a plant most folks pull for the compost long before it ever offers up its seed. Which carries us down to number 5, a plant most folks pull for the compost long before it ever offers up its seed. Lettuce. In 1973, up in Maine, a young man named Rob Johnston Jr. started a little outfit called Johnny's Selected Seeds. While the big market chased hybrids, he built his catalogue on open-pollinated kinds, chosen to suit the ground where they grew. That was the quiet choice. Everyone else was selling you a plant you could not repeat. He was selling you one you could keep. Now here is why lettuce sits this high on the list. The extension charts and the seed company charts agree. Lettuce seed will hold for roughly 5 to 6 years in cool, dry, dark storage. That is among the longest-lived seed in the whole garden. Think on that. Years of salad greens out of one packet you paid a few dollars for at the counter. Buy it once, store it right, and you are covered for years before you ever save ahead of your own. Saving it is about as easy as saving gets. Let a few plants bolt instead of cutting them for the table. Let them shoot up flower and go to fluff. The seed heads turn white and fluffy, and when you hold a paper bag under them and rub, they drift down like dandelion down on a still morning. Shake them out, screen off the chaff, and you have next year in the palm of your hand. When you sow those saved seeds, barely cover them. A 1/4 inch down, no more, because lettuce needs light near the surface to wake up. A word on the law, since folks worry. Saving seed from an ordinary open-pollinated lettuce for your own garden is plain legal. It is the store-bought kinds marked patented that you leave alone. Here is the payoff, and I will speak it as a gardener, not as a chart. Let a few of those heads shatter right where they stand, and next spring you will find volunteer seedlings come up on their own, free for the pulling and transplanting. Your grandfather knew that trick. It cost him nothing. That is number 5. Now we step from the easiest saver to the one that can put a grown man in the hospital. Number 4. Squash and pumpkins. In 1983, down in Tucson, Arizona, 4 people, Gary Paul Neban, Barney Burns, Mahina Dries, and Karen Reichardt, founded Native Seed/Search. They began by helping the Tohono O'odham Nation get back the desert-adapted seed their elders had grown for generations. That is the turning point worth marking. Seed that fed a nation almost slipped away, and a handful of folks caught it. But squash will not stay true on its own, and this is where care matters. Seed Savers Exchange lists the isolation distance for the squash family at up to 1/2 mile. 1/2 mile, friend. That is because the bees do the pollinating and they will cross your squash with any other squash, and even with a wild or ornamental gourd growing down the lane, so you do it by hand. At first light before the bees wake, you take a soft paintbrush, move the pollen from a male bloom to a female bloom, and then you tape that female blossom shut, like an envelope sealed before the morning. Keep that tape on until the blossom withers, and tie a ribbon on the stem so you never mistake that fruit for supper. You tag it and you let it mature well past the eating stage. Now hear me on the danger, because this is not old wives' talk. When squash crosses wrong, the fruit can turn bitter with a compound that is flat out toxic. There is a clinical record of 5 grown adults put in the hospital after eating bitter bottle gourd, and a 47-year-old man who went into distributive shock after drinking a health tonic made from the same. The rule from poison control is short and worth memorizing. If it tastes bitter, you spit it out. You do not swallow it. One good mother fruit can hold hundreds of seeds, enough for years of planting, but only if the cross was clean. The money only comes back to you if you isolate or hand-pollinate right. Do it wrong, and a failed save costs far more than a packet of seed. That is number 4. Which brings us to the one where the whole promise falls apart. Number 3, corn. In 1926, in Iowa, Henry A. Wallace built the Hybrid Corn Company, later known as Pioneer Hybrid. His Copper Cross hybrid had already won the Iowa State Yield Test back in 1923, and the corn was good. The yields were real. But you had to buy the seed again every single year. Here's the smoking gun. Save seed from a first-generation hybrid does not breed true. It scatters into a wild, uneven, lower-yielding mess in the next generation. That has been settled plant science since the 1920s. It is not a trick somebody dreamed up in a boardroom. It is simple genetics. And corn makes it worse because Seed Savers Exchange lists its isolation distance at about 1 mile. A whole mile, since the wind carries the pollen and crosses your corn with any corn tasseling nearby. Your people saved their own corn for generations, ear by ear, before any company sold it back to them by the sack. That door is still open to you. It just is not the door-marked hybrid. So here is the only honest way through. Start only from a packet plainly labelled open-pollinated, and named heirloom dent or flint corn, never a hybrid sweet corn. Let the ears dry hard on the stalk before you shell them. From an ordinary hybrid packet there is no reliable money to save at all. That is the plain truth of number 3. That leaves number 2, the crop that will not surrender one seed in its first year no matter how hard your back works. That leaves number 2, the crop that will not surrender one seed in its first year no matter how hard your back works. Carrots, and every biennial root that lives like it. A carrot you plant this spring will feed you this fall sure, but it will not hand you a single seed. Penn State Extension teaches this plain. The carrot sets no seed in its first year. The plant has to live through a winter and bolt in a second season before it ever flowers. So the man who wants the title's promise from a carrot has to be patient across 2 full years, Here is how your people did it. In fall, you dig your healthiest roots, the straight ones, the sweet ones. In a mild place, you leave them in the ground and mulch them deep. In cold country, you pack those roots in damp sand, held near 32 to 40 degrees, like buried treasure carried through the winter. Come spring, you replant. That second season the plant shoots up, flowers white, and gives you seed at last. Now hear the safety word, friend, because this one carries a real danger. When you let a carrot flower, you invite in its wild cousins. Wild carrot, Queen Anne's lace, is the very same species. It will cross with your garden line if it stands near, so keep them apart. And out at the field edge grows something that looks close but kills. Poison hemlock. Penn State Extension gives you the numbers to tell them apart. Second-year poison hemlock climbs 3 to 6 feet tall, on a hairless hollow stem blotched with purple. Wild carrot rarely tops 2 feet, and its stem is hairy and fuzzy to the touch. Learn that difference before you ever cut. Wear gloves. Do not mow it unprotected, for the sap alone can burn skin. No seed, no money until year 2. Of all 7, this is the one that undercuts the promise hardest. Which brings us down to number 1, the honest one, onions. This is where the whole idea gets tested, so I'm going to give you the deepest of it here. Illinois Extension and the storage charts from Johnny's tell a truth most sellers skip past. Onion seed does not keep. Its reliable life drops to about 1 year, the shortest of any common garden vegetable. Set that beside the others. Tomato seed holds 4 to 6 years. Lettuce holds 5 to 6. Onion, about 1. So the packet you buy once and set on a shelf may be dead before your second spring. The premise collapses fastest right here. Now what saves the rest of your seed is storage, and almost nobody does it right. Cool, dry, dark. Say those 3 words like your grandfather said them. Take any seed, saved or bought, and seal it in a glass jar with a little silica gel packet to pull the moisture down. Set that jar in the refrigerator, held at 32 to 50 degrees, below 50% humidity. Label it with the harvest year in your own hand. Picture it there, that fridge jar beside its silica packet, a 1-year clock ticking down for the onions, a slower clock for the rest. Correct storage is the only thing that makes buy once real for the long-lived seed. An onion, told honest, means you regrow and resave every single year. There is no shame in that. That is the crop, not the gardener. So there is your countdown, all 7 walked. Now the last practical step, and do not skip it. Before the season turns, run a germination test. 10 seeds, a damp paper towel, folded and kept warm. Wait the days out and count what sprouts. If 7 come up, your packet is strong. If 2 come up, you just saved a whole bed from a dead planting. A minute of counting beats a month of bare dirt. Then tell me something in the comments. Of these 7, beans, tomatoes, lettuce, squash, corn, carrots, onions, which is the first one you will try this year? Name it. Tell me your county and your winters. The one that gets the most comments is the one I build next. I read them all and I answer what I can. And hear this before you go. If nobody ever taught you this, that is not a failing in you. This was your grandfather's knowledge, and somewhere along the way it got sold back to us by the packet. You're just picking it up again. That is all. It was always yours to hold. Remember the 2 seeds I opened with, carried out of Bavaria in 1884. That German pink tomato. It still breeds true today. Plant its saved seed and you get German pink again, the same fruit, the same line, unbroken across the years. And it does that for one reason. It is open-pollinated. A saved hybrid can never promise you that. That is the whole difference between a seed you own and a seed you rent. Next time, neighbour, we walk out to the field edge together, into that carrot family where the sweet and the deadly grow side by side. I will show you how to read a hollow purple stem from a hairy one, how to forage the wild edge without gambling your life, and which lookalikes to never ever put in a basket. It is the most dangerous walk we take, and the most worth taking. One last thing, friend. If this put something back in your hands that ought to have been passed to you long ago, subscribe. Not for me. Do it so the next person searching at midnight, worried and low on grocery money, finds this waiting instead of another ad selling them seed they will have to buy again next spring. That is the only reason I ask. Keep the old ways. They kept